Welcome back. We are live again. It's Premier League preview time. Welcome to all you wonderful people in the chat. Today we're going to be going through a few different games, a few different matchups, some news. Of course, the big news today, Trossard joining Arsenal. Absolutely massive. We're going to dive into Arsenal's game with Manchester United, but also a big focus on Liverpool versus Chelsea. Humongous game for Graham Potter and Jurgen Klopp. Both clubs massively underperforming this season in the Premier League. They have got it all to do. But how is everybody doing today? We'll get some W's in the chat as well. When you get in, let me know. We're going to go through all the football, the information, the statistics, and of course, check out a number of things on SofaScore. So let's kick things off with that news, of course, that Trossard is joining Arsenal on a 3-year deal. For me, Arsenal have got a squad of real quality, but maybe adding someone like a Trossard in the chat right now into the squad is very, very important for Arsenal. We're looking at the depth of the team, and you think after the Gabriel Jesus injury, that striking position was a little bit light. You've got the likes of Gabriel Jesus missing. Martelli can play as a centre-forward, and Nketiah is a centre-forward, and of course Marquinhos is more of a right winger than a striker. I think Trossard is a fantastic acquisition. 28 years old, blends a bit of experience with the quality in his goal scoring. He's a player that's basically approaching the sort of peak of his career in football. I think this season is going to be his best ever goal scoring season in terms of the statistics. 7 goals and 2 assists in 16 Premier League games this season. But it is that plethora of roles that he can play for Arteta that I think is so exciting. Can play as a number 9, play as a left winger, play as an attacking midfielder, probably could do a job on the right-hand side as well as that left wing. And of course, if Arsenal want to throw the book at someone and go for a 3-4-3, could be the perfect attacking left wing back. The other side with Arsenal, apparently there is news that they are going to be signing a centre-half as well. So as soon as we have more information on that, we will bring that to you on the Statman Dave's Clips channel right now. But guys, that is the biggest bit of news. Trossard to Arsenal. I think it's a massive signing, and the signing that could lead Arsenal to their first title in 20 years. Arsenal currently sit top of the Premier League with a game in hand on Manchester City, which could see that gap open up to 8 points in the Premier League. I think that is absolutely fantastic. So, so far, congratulations to Arsenal Football Club. Manchester United sit in third after a pretty decent week, beating Manchester City in the derby, and an unfortunate draw against Crystal Palace that they won quite well. City, of course, beat Tottenham last night 4-2 in a brilliant game of football, especially near half-time. Spurs took a surprise 2-goal lead into the break, Kulusevski and Emerson Royale, and then 4 goals for Manchester City in the second half, which of course 3 of them were in the first 15 minutes, putting them into a commanding position in second in the Premier League to continue that chase on Manchester City. But this is the Premier League preview. We're going to go through a number of games over the season, so make sure you subscribe to this channel and smash that like button. Today, on today's menu, we're going to be starting with Liverpool versus Chelsea in the Premier League. Liverpool and Chelsea are in pretty interesting positions. Both clubs are going through a little bit of a rebuild right now, and both clubs are in, massive need for reinforcements in certain positions. And of course, Chelsea taking that very literally. Chelsea have done a lot of business over January already. They've recruited heavily with the likes of Mudryk joining, Andre Santos, Fofana, João Felix on loan, Badiashile from Monaco as well. It's one of these situations where I think they're starting to grow and build. Apologies, that drilling is a little bit loud, guys. Hopefully it's not too loud in your ears. Just have to wait for that to run out before we can continue. Jakob Kavarol in the chat from Iqbal. In there, welcome everyone today. Luke, David, Clive, Blaine, Richie. Welcome you all today to the chat, and we're going to have a good old show when this drilling finally stops. Thank you. We've got some cladding issues on the building that we have our office in, and they are trying to fix said issues, but they shouldn't be doing it at a time when we're talking about Premier League football. Back to the Chelsea transfers, players that have brought to the football club. Going from the top, João Felix, Fofana been brought in an attacking sense. Mudryk signed from Shakhtar Donetsk. Andre Silva from Santos for around 12 million euros. And of course, Baratshvili from Monaco. I think this is a really good signing. One of the best young centre-backs in the world of football. His performance against Crystal Palace was absolutely brilliant. 9 clearances, won 4 out of his 4 tackles, completed 96% of his passes, won 5 out of his 6 ground duels, and 6 out of 8 of his aerial duels. A brilliant debut in the Premier League for Chelsea. And I think that's, an interesting part to maybe start on that discussion. Is the recruitment right at Chelsea right now? They've done a lot of work bringing in backroom staff from, the likes of the Red Bull Group and from Brighton. But it's a kind of different approach than, let's say last season. You'd say last season under Thomas Tuchel, it was more signing players that were ready-made to compete right now, the likes of Koulibaly, the likes of Aubameyang. That arguably both of those have flopped a little bit, that haven't really got anywhere close to, what you'd want to, have from a performance level from an Aubameyang or a Koulibaly. And I think Chelsea's recruitment strategy has changed. I think they are now buying youth with the idea to coach them into world-class players. This, in the long term, is a great strategy from Chelsea. I'm not sure how they're going to be getting away from, for FFP over this window, because they've spent a hell of a lot of money so far. They've spent more than the likes of, I think, Serie A, Liga and La Liga combined, which is pretty crazy for one football club to do that. But when you're thinking about the long-term game in football, recruitment and transfers are going to become really expensive. We've seen the likes of Neymar move for 180 million. We've seen Mbappe move for 200. A lot of big signings moving around. So I think this strategy of tweaking it and signing young players, coaching them into a top position should be the strategy of someone like Chelsea. So I think the recruitment has been good. It's just been vast, to say the least. Mudryk, of course, was linked heavily with Arsenal. I thought he would have been a brilliant addition for Arsenal. His pace, his ability 1v1, his technical and tactical quality, very, very good. Finishes well, would provide a really good outlet for Arsenal on the left wing. Of course, now he's joined Chelsea. How does he fit in at Chelsea? Graham Potter is going to have to build a new system to fit him in. I think that's one of the big concerns with Chelsea in this sense is, what's their best system? How do they get all their, top talents in? And they've got too many attackers. I think that is the biggest point from here. In terms of the game against Liverpool, I kind of expect them to play a kind of 3-4-3 structure or a kind of, dropping back to a 5-2-2-1. They'll look to create out wide. They'll look to create a box in midfield to play through the lines, to play through Liverpool. And this is a really interesting one because, from reading Pep Lijnders' book, of last season, he spoke about how Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel, one of the most difficult opponents in the league in terms of the structure of their build-up, in terms of how they struggled to press them out of the back. There were a few issues there. And when you're looking at Chelsea, they're very similar under Graham Potter. They will try and play through the lines. They'll basically try and overload you in the central part of the pitch. We're talking Jorginho, Mason Mount, Hakim Ziyech up against Thiago, Fabinho and Henderson. That's an area where Graham Potter will try and utilise, the football, try and get the wing-backs into high positions. The interesting thing is whether that Graham Potter will go for Ziyech and Mount central or potentially Ziyech as a right wing-back. We saw that in their last Premier League game, him being used in that position. Their last game for Chelsea, of course, coming against Crystal Palace in the league. And we actually saw this kind of Graham Potter Brighton shape, with Leandro Trossard being used as the nominal left winger for Brighton. We're seeing Hakim Ziyech being used as the nominal wing back for Chelsea, which I think worked really, really well. And you look at the statistics from the game, Hakim Ziyech grabbed himself assist, created 2 chances, put 13 crosses into the box, had 3 shots on goal. But the interesting thing, completed 4 out of his 5 dribbles, but won 12 out of his 21 duels. I think this could be a really good position for Hakim Ziyech. And we can see it in the average positions, how Chelsea's shape does look like a bit of a lopsided 3-5-2. Your back 4 is Trevor Chalobah, Thiago Silva and Batshuayi. And in the midfield, you've got Jorginho holding, Conor Gallagher, number 23, and Chukwuemeka as number 30, and a front two of Havertz and Mason Mount in the middle with Lewis Hall providing the width. I quite like the idea of this, guys. Get in the chat. Do you think Chelsea should potentially use Hakim Ziyech as a wing-back? In a 3-5-2 shape? Is that the best role for him in the squad right now? A lot of people in the chat, the likes of Nico, the likes of Cryptic FBL, Del Boy, all talking about Jakub joining Arsenal. Much love to you, Del Boy, as well, in the chat. T-Jess is here as well. What happens if the signings don't work with 7- and 8-year contracts? That is a concern for Chelsea. That is a big concern. When you're bringing players in that haven't played, Premier League football, that have, come for a high fee like Mudryk, it is a big concern. But at the same time, I think the talent is there with him. I think the talent is there with a lot of the players. I like some of their signings. I think they've done well. So it is a slight, concern for Chelsea fans. What happens if you stuck with Mudryk for 8.5 years? But I think he'll realise his potential at Chelsea. The issue is kind of what happens to the players that have been bought as stopgaps. The likes of Dennis Zakaria, the likes of Aubameyang up front. Christian Pulisic, you could potentially say, is a stopgap as well. But back to the tactical side of things, I think we'll flip it round, and I think Graham Potter will potentially use Hakim Ziyech as a wing-back, which could see another attacker into the team. I think one of the big things in this game, one of the things that Liverpool really struggled with against Brighton, was the use of wide forwards. So let's put Hakim Ziyech to the wing-back position. And one of the things that Liverpool struggled with against Brighton was 2 players wide and a false 9 dropping in. They really struggled with that movement in behind from out to in. The likes of Solly Marsh and Mitoma, 2 of the most exciting players in the Premier League right now, had a field day against the Liverpool back 4. And we're looking at the statistics of that game and how that game was really won and lost. Brighton created that central overload but held the width in the final third. The average positions from Brighton is a thing of absolute beauty. That shape is fantastic. You can see the diamond in midfield. We can see the double false 9. We can see the 2 wingers being high and wide. It's a thing of beauty. An inverted fullback on one side, an overlapping wing back on the other side. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's a thing that we look at that shape, and that is how you can break down this Liverpool team. You overload them in the central areas. You overload their press centrally. You draw them on, and then you hit them with the wing backs. Not the wing back, sorry. Hit with the wingers high. Solly Marsh, a goal and 2 assists, created 4 chances, had 4 shots on goal. And Mitoma, didn't contribute from a goal and assist perspective, but was a threat all day. 2 out of his 2 dribbles completed, 4 shots as well. Absolutely superb. So Chelsea need to take some of that into their sort of setup in this match, whether it is, as we've got here, Sterling and Mount taking up those wide positions, or potentially how it might work is Havertz and Mason Mount operating as a front 2, Sterling as one of the wide players, and then Ziyech maybe being that threat in the final third, with Chelsea looking like a kind of, again, that lopsided back 3 shifting over to the right. Hall can provide more width as Sterling comes inside, and Ziyech can provide that element in behind the defence. And it's an interesting one because Liverpool are a team that are in, a massive, massive problem right now in terms of their own high standards. This season, there's a lot wrong with Liverpool. They're sitting 9th in the Premier League. Their pressing looks pretty atrocious right now. There is a problem with them creating, them scoring, them forcing the opponents to really cause them problems. And when you look at it, there's a number of issues for me. I think when you look at their big players, they are simply not performing. When I talk big players, I'm talking the likes of Mohamed Salah, I'm talking Trent Alexander-Arnold. Those guys have consistently been very, very good for Liverpool. When you look at Salah's statistics in the Premier League this season, only 7 goals and 4 assists in 18 games. I say only 7 assists and 4 goals in 18 games, because if you look at his record from the previous seasons at Liverpool, it starts to paint a picture. You go back to the first season that Mohamed Salah was at Liverpool. After 18 games, Salah had scored 14 goals and got 4 assists. You take the next season, the 18-19 season, again, same point in the season, Salah had scored 11 goals and got 6 assists. You look at one of his most disappointing years, the 2019-20 season, where he finishes with 19 goals and 10 assists in the Premier League. At this point, he'd had 9 goals and 4 assists. This is a sort of theme that rides through the seasons, that this is Salah's worst season by a mile. At this point, last season, Salah was on 15 goals and 10 assists. And I think that does come down to a lot of different factors. But Salah has to hold himself accountable in this. Of course, Darwin Núñez has been absolutely destroyed from the in front of goal. You know, the amount of chances that he's missed in this season has been pretty crazy. He's missed 15 big chances this season already. I think, which is, up there with more than the entirety of last season for most players. 15 big chances missed for Liverpool. Liverpool are massively, underperforming their standards in terms of putting the ball in the back of the net. But look at Mohamed Salah, 4th position in the league. He has missed 12 big chances. Even if he takes half of those chances, he'll be on 13 goals. Liverpool will be on a much better position. So as much as Darwin Núñez has taken the flak, I think you've got to look at Salah and you've got to look at other players in the team and how they've underperformed. Because, we know that Salah's a world-class player, brilliant player. But at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that he is really struggling in the Premier League this season, and he needs to step up. Amongst Salah underperforming his statistics this season, another player I would throw out as well and say Trent Alexander-Arnold again is flattered to deceive. You're looking in the Premier League this season, a single assist. And when you're thinking about this player should be on course to be the best assisting defender of all time, very disappointing season. A slight defence of that, that's going in juggler, that's going in two-footed. A defence of that would be that Mohamed Salah's expected assist numbers are quite good still. He's on 3.8 expected assists and only got 1 assist. Of course, as we saw previously, Liverpool have, 2 of the top 5 big chances missed in the Premier League. So there is issues there with Liverpool and how they've been playing. But at the same time, Trent is not providing the same level as he usually is. His expected assist numbers are below, his best seasons in the Premier League. And it's something that he needs to do. He needs to step up and be that offensive weapon. And again, teams have come against Liverpool and really targeted the right-hand side of the defence. They've ran him, they've span him, they've really, tried to cause him problems. There's been a lot of talk about his position and whether it should be moved. And for me, Liverpool should have moved him a lot sooner in this season to a higher position. The big thing that I've kept on speaking about is moving Mohamed Salah into central midfield. That's been something I think is vitally important for Liverpool, and fitting him in the team in a higher position. I think you're just going to get a lot more progression out of him. I think he's a very good presser off the ball. But more importantly, you don't have that defensive weakness anymore. You don't have that threat that every single team coming against you can target that right back slot. And it's something I've said previously. Get him in a higher position. Allow him to still link on the overlap with Mohamed Salah, but allow him to come inside. Allow him to attack the penalty area. And I think you'll see a higher input. It's something where, like we're saying in the chat from HFN, Mudryk would roast Trent. Yes, he would. He's a very, very direct player. I've seen him roast some of the best defensive players in European football this season. So, yeah, that would be a big, big concern for me. So I think throwing Trent into a higher position is how Liverpool can get back to that creative best that we've seen with them, with their interchange, with their fluidity. And Liverpool's midfield has been awful this season. Their counter-press against Brighton was a joke. The amount of times that Brighton just simply played through the lines. And the thing with Chelsea is they've got the quality to do that. Chelsea have got the quality out the back with Thiago Silva, with Koulibaly, with Kovacic's ability to ride challenges. If Thiago has that same approach that he had against Brighton with some lackadaisical pressing, which opened up the entire game for Brighton to play through, that's going to be a massive concern. Too many times against Brighton, what we saw was Liverpool's kind of front three plus Thiago basically got played through at ease. Easy played through, and then you're at the weak defence. And if, you've got Liverpool, if they do that against Chelsea, you've got the threat of Lewis Hall from a wing-back position who seems to get himself into good goal-scoring positions. You've got a very dangerous position where, your Matips and Kanates are going to have to be defending against a very fluid front five. And that is a massive concern for Liverpool if their press is off. And I think one of the big things would be bringing Trent into midfield, would improve that press and would improve those numbers. One of the other situations, I think, for this game, even if whichever position that Jurgen Klopp starts Trent in, probably will be this kind of, right big back position that we've seen. One of the areas where you can really attack this Chelsea defence is on Trevor Chalobah at the back post. So I think one of the big things I'd say for Liverpool is, creating that situation where, Salah can drop those balls just off to Trent, and then Trent can cross from deep to Darwin Núñez and Cody Gakpo on the back post. I think that's a massive, advantage that Liverpool could get with that methodology of, basically looking for those balls to the back. If we take a look at the goal that Fulham scored against Chelsea in the recent Premier League game, the goal that won the game between the two sides, and Fulham 6th in the Premier League. What a job Marco Silva's doing. But the game against Chelsea, the ball right at the end was Tete super high and playing from that inside channel, dropping it down into that area just behind Trevor Chalobah, the blind side of Thiago Silva. And I think that's where, we've got to see Liverpool really utilising that as a threat from a tactical perspective, opening it up and getting it to the back. That's what I'd kind of look at in a sense. And Darwin Núñez is a massive part of this. Darwin Núñez is really good on that back stick. He's a player that has that ability to challenge the fullback in those areas. And Klopp said on January the 17th, I hope Darwin is coming back in training tomorrow or Thursday. So he might be then in contention, of course. That was in terms of the last game Liverpool played in the Cup against Wolverhampton Wanderers, so he should be back this weekend. And I think that's an area where Liverpool have really got to target Chelsea inside left channel, targeting the Trevor Chalobah in a defensive sense, but also challenging Hakim Ziyech if he's going to play as a wing back as expected in those areas. Vin in the chat, William and Fernandinho are the only players that played from Shakhtar and done well in the league. Mkhitaryan, Fred, Bernard, players that haven't worked out. Yeah, that's a fair point. I think Mkhitaryan was killed by Jose Mourinho. I think if Mkhitaryan came in now to this Manchester United team with Erik ten Hag, I think he would have been an absolute star. So yeah, it's obviously circumstantial, Vin, but it's a good point. I think Mudryk will be a decent signing for Chelsea if they play him. And that is the concern. He will be a flop, as you mentioned there, Arsenal for life, if they don't play him. And we could see that because they have about 7,000 attackers, as we looked at before. Guys, there have been my thoughts on Chelsea, on Liverpool, on the tactical side of things. Get your score predictions into the chat, guys, for this game. Massive game in the Premier League. Chelsea versus Liverpool. The early kickoff on Saturday. It's a match that both teams really need to win. When we're taking into consideration of where they sit in the league, you've got to start winning games. If they've got any aspirations for the top four, both teams need to win this. Liverpool in 9th, Chelsea in 10th. It's really got to go. I think the score prediction for this, I'm going to go with a draw. I think it's going to be a bad result for both teams. I think one team really needs to go out there and try and open up the door, try and create something out of nothing. But we've seen in recent games between the two sides, we've had 2 draws in the league. We've had 2 draws in the EFL Cup final. In the FA Cup final. That EFL Cup final, though, was an absolute banger of a game, if you remember. Probably the greatest 0-0 after 120 minutes of all time. Mateo Kovacic was superb in central midfield in that game. Battled, carried, drove with the ball, and broke Liverpool's press at times. As you can see, Trent Alexander-Arnold, man of the match for Liverpool. 6 chances created, 103 touches. I think he is the key match in this game. But my score predictions for this match, I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw, I think, in the Premier League. The week's going to start off well. I think Liverpool will open up the scoring. I think you're looking at Chelsea coming back and fighting, and Potter maybe making some substitutions to change the match. But guys, good stuff as always. Shall we move on to the next massive game in the Premier League that we're going to be previewing this weekend? That, of course, is Man United versus Arsenal. Humongous game. Absolutely humongous. Vin in the chat before we move on to that. Do you think Trent Alexander-Arnold will be better suited in midfield? Absolutely, Vin. I'll be playing him as a right-sided central midfielder. Liverpool need a midfielder. Trent is that guy. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullback in there. Get Joe Gomez as a right fullba And then we're looking at a really decent setup, a decent team, and I think that will really help. Jean in the chat. So, Frezenda and Cavor seem to be wrapped up as well. 3 signings, 24 hours. Arsenal, serious players in this title race. And obviously we've framed this video as being, is Trossard the final piece in the jigsaw? But I'd argue that Arsenal are building something more of a kind of a dynasty here. You know, the signings they are making have been absolutely brilliant. You know, seriously good signings. And when we take a look at what they've built under Edu, under Arteta, it is very impressive. Really impressive. And to get these 3 signings wrapped up so quickly, and to analyse it and to see how it's going to fit into the team and how they're going to build from it, it's, you know, credit. Massive. Absolutely massive. Let's take a look at the tactical side for Arsenal, of course. Trossard's been brought in from Brighton for around 21 million up front. With add-ons, could potentially take it to 26 million pounds. I think a fantastic deal for Arsenal in the sense of, you know, you've got a player there that can play multiple roles and multiple positions and really plug the gap when injuries come. And I think that's the challenge that Arsenal have got. We've only played 18 games in the Premier League so far this season, so there will need to be more players used. And with Trossard, obviously, instantly could come in and play as that 9. And Nketiah has done well, you know, deputising for Gabriel Jesus is injury, but at the same time, Trossard is a completely different forward. You know, he is more of an attacking midfielder playing as a striker, very much a false 9. So Arsenal can play more of their kind of high wingers, false 9 shape and structure, which has done them so well in the league and so well in Europe in all the competitions. I think Trossard in there is just a player that's very much needed and a good signing. Will he start this weekend against Manchester United? I'd probably say it's slightly too early for him to come in. So expect Eddie Nketiah to deputise as that centre forward. But I wouldn't expect Arsenal to change much from this. I think we've seen with their structure and their team that this Arsenal squad knows what they're doing on and off the ball. They've got better and better with their patterns. They've just got great quality. Vin in the chat, Trossard has Santi vibes. Signed at the same age with insane close control. Santi Cazorla, what a footballer. When he moved to defensive midfield, or central midfield, should we say, oh, that was a joy to watch. It reminded me of Paul Scholes in his heyday at Manchester United. The quality, fantastic. Crypto FPL, young defenders to Arsenal, brilliant. Yeah, I think that's good. Building that squad out for the future, very important for Arsenal. But their setup is, you know, is decent. Their setup is very good. It's a formation, it's a tactic that's worked really well in the Premier League, and I think either throwing Trossard in or leaving Trossard off the bench could be, you know, really valuable for this match against Manchester United. When taking a look at the expected 11s for both teams on SofaScore, Arsenal, we've got them exactly how we visualise them on the tactics board. Manchester United, Wout Weghorst to make his second Premier League start in a row after debuting against Crystal Palace with the likes of Anthony, Marcus Rashford on the flanks, Bruno Fernandes sitting in attacking midfield, and Eriksen and Fred at the base of midfield. I think the interesting thing for Manchester United, of course, is who comes in and replaces Casemiro. This is a humongous loss for Manchester United. Massive loss for Manchester United. And for Arsenal fans, it's big. I don't think you could have asked for much more. What Casemiro has done for United has been absolutely exceptional. His ability to control games, to break things up, to tactically foul at the right time has been so refreshing to see from Manchester United. His recent form in the league has been brilliant. Fantastic against Nottingham Forest. The assist with his outside of the boot was brilliant. 3 chances created, 107 touches of the football, won 6 out of his 10 duels. 5 tackles won, 3 interceptions. Humongous loss. And the reason why he's such a big loss is because he very much anchors Man United's midfield. We could still see the kind of shape there for Manchester United. It is very much a 4-1-4-1 with Casemiro holding in defensive midfield. Very similar to how Thomas Partey plays for Arsenal. that Partey is so important. Just going back into the chat from Trevor, we need to sign someone to rest Partey. I think that's the last little bit of business that Arsenal may need to do, is bringing someone in to help Partey and his fitness, because we've seen with Man United how good Casemiro has been when he's come in. I think Partey is similar, that these two players are basically, I'd say, the most important players of both teams. Hence why I think it's such a big miss for Manchester United. It's a player that's kind of you can't really sort of replace. When we look at replacing Casemiro, Man United have got a few options in the squad. I think mainly there's two, one being Fred and one being Scott McTominay, and it's difficult to work out which player is going to be best for the role. You look at Fred's performance in the derby, absolutely sensational. But Fred is always better as that kind of runner, that guy that's going to be chasing around, that's going to be herring around the pitch, putting in challenges and so forth. And I think from a Manchester United perspective, with the system that they've got, it's more of a holding midfielder that United needs, someone that's going to sit, someone that's going to kind of try and play the single pivot role, which is so difficult to do. In European football, hence why these players come at such a premium and they're so rare. We're talking Thomas Partey, Rodri, probably the best three in the league by a country mile. Fabinho's levels have massively dropped off this season, hence why we've seen Liverpool struggle. I think that's the importance of these types of players, is that they basically knit everything together. And to lose someone of that quality for Manchester United, it's going to be a miss. And I think I think for me, it gives Arsenal an advantage in this game. I think you look at Arsenal now as favourites going into this match. It's one of these situations where United can cope. They can, find a way to get through and to deal with this loss. But at the same time, it's a big loss. And the improvement with United, look at the points per game, you look at the points per 90, you look at the wins with Casemiro, it's massive. So let's take a look at how United can adapt to this. Of course, Arsenal setting up in their kind of 4-2-3-1, the transitions to that 4-1-4-1 in an attacking sense. Manchester United, again, played a very, very similar system with Eriksen moving into the advanced area, similar to how Granit Xhaka does. Casemiro obviously suspended. Scott McTominay, probably the player that's going to come in. I think McTominay's very much the right profile to replace him. I think if Fred comes in, not only do you have a problem because Martin Odegaard will start to drift into positions and just completely start to run the show, but you need someone to sit and to hold and to kind of boss that area. Fred's too aggressive. So if Arsenal are building up and they're getting into their build-up shape and Xhaka's moving high and Zinchenko's moving inside, my concern would be Fred and covering those passes into Odegaard. We've seen this season that Odegaard is so deadly in between the lines. One of the best players in the league this season, top scorer for Arsenal with 8 goals. He has been fantastic. And if Man United can't cope with that and can't deal with that threat, Arsenal win the game. If you can't stop the link to Odegaard, that means Saka gets the ball, that means Xhaka gets the ball, and Martinelli's fed. These are big, big problems for Manchester United. Saka in the Premier League this season, only Kevin De Bruyne has got more assists with 7, and of course he's got 6 goals as well. He's having a great season and so difficult to defend against. It's going to be a lot of work for Marcus Rashford in a transitional sense as well, getting back. I think, in a way, for United, if they were to properly want to cover the game and maybe go a little bit more down the line of the City performance, it would potentially be playing both Scott McTominay and Fred. But I don't think that's needed. I think Eriksen deep in this game is quite important. I think United need some technical players deep in midfield to get it. Crypto FPL, I'm still a little wary of Eriksen as CDM. Me too. But I think we'll have a look at some analysis in a minute, guys, of Eriksen playing against Arsenal. And one of the really important things for Manchester United in that game was looking at how Eriksen linked with Bruno Fernandes and Arsenal couldn't stop that link, and why there was such a concern for Arsenal in that game, and kind of how tactically it worked. And the other threat as well with Eriksen from that deeper position is his underlapping. I think one of the big things that United did really well in the reverse fixture was feeding Bruno Fernandes. in that advanced area. If we take a look at the kind of the setup that United used in that game against Arsenal in their last match between the two, where United won 3-1, they went with Scott McTominay and Eriksen. Scott McTominay more of the on the right-hand side, Eriksen on that left-hand side. And if we look at the average positions, we can see how advanced Eriksen is. You know, he's playing very similar. He's playing that inside left position. And I think that gave United a really good link in an attacking sense. But when you look at some of the goals that United scored against Arsenal, and it's 2 goals that was a direct pass from Eriksen to Bruno Fernandes that broke Arsenal's lines, that instantly got United into the final third. And that's something that I think with Eriksen in this deeper position, you're going to get that passage of play is going to open up. This is very much going to be a footballing game for Man United and for Arsenal. I think it's going to be a sensational game of football. So having more ball players deep in midfield, I think is very important. You know, Xhaka moving high and Zinchenko moving inside, having that extra ball option, going to be vitally important to seeing how Manchester United can open up Arsenal and so forth the other way around as well. Can Trossard play as a number 8? I think that Trossard could play that position, but if Trossard were to come into this Arsenal team right now and replace Granit Xhaka, I think the midfield would have to kind of move in terms of the shape. What I mean there is Trossard would have to defend in the number 10 position, Partey would have to shift to the left-hand side, and Odegaard would move into a kind of right defensive midfield position. Then when Arsenal win the ball back through Partey, Trossard would move to the inside left, Odegaard inside right, and we'd have the same kind of shape for Arsenal in attacking sense. So I think it very much would work, but it would just mean that Odegaard would have to defend a little bit deeper and sit in a kind of more defensive position. But I don't think it's going to be for this game. I think Xhaka's been really good this season and been good in these big matches, controlling his own head, but as well as, you know, leading to chances and getting into good goal-scoring positions. So for Arsenal, in terms of their setup and their structure, I think it is going to be about, you know, getting the ball to Odegaard in between the lines, going to be getting into their build-up shape, feeding the likes of Bukayo Saka out wide, and then maybe waiting for that substitution. You know, if it's needed, they've got quality on the bench. You know, the likes of Fabio Vieira could be used as a central midfield option in that inside channel. As we mentioned, Trossard could come in either on the left wing or as that kind of centre forward in the game late, or potentially Trossard could move to that left wing back position. Arsenal switch to a 3 at the back. There's massive options for Arsenal right now in terms of what they're doing. But let's take a look at kind of how United could utilise the underlap in this match. Manchester United scored a fantastic goal against Crystal Palace midweek, and a goal that was kind of absolutely superb. So let's take a look, if we could take a look at that right now. Let's see if this loads properly. Let's go escape that, go back. And then we'll have to go back into that as well. So let's jump in, add a folder. So this was probably my favourite goal under Erik ten Hag that Manchester United have scored. And it's a goal that we kind of expect Erik ten Hag teams to do. You know, the underlap, the third man run, so vitally important for Manchester United. And I think one of the big things with this goal is that we can kind of see the philosophy, the style that Manchester United want to play, the width that's created in certain areas. So let's take a look at that United goal, the Bruno Fernandes goal that opened up the game. I think there's a lot of principles that United have been working on in training to do this, and Arsenal need to stop this. I think this is a really interesting part of the match. It's how Arsenal's pressing structure and defensive transition to a low block in that 4-4-2 shape can stop Manchester United. So pick the clip up with Luke Shaw at left back, playing forward into Eriksen. I think one of the big things with Manchester United and how they do build out the back from now, with Luke Shaw in possession, we do see quite a lot of like lateral movement for Eriksen to move into a space to receive the pass. Consequently, you know, Rashford will hold a further width position. Bruno will shift over, and it will open up an inside position for Christian Eriksen to move into. And I think that's why Thomas Partey's role in this game for Arsenal is vitally important. But when Eriksen's drifting, being very wary of that second movement. So let's go back to the goal and have a look at that second movement. So Eriksen receives in a kind of left half position, the classic like Toni Kroos position we've seen time and time again. And obviously when this happens, there is a chain of movements. Bruno's going to move to the ball. He's going to receive in the wide area to kind of link the play, drifting to that inside left channel. What this creates for Manchester United is a 3v2 on the Crystal Palace right fullback in Nathaniel Klein. What this opens up is a threat. So as you can see, Rashford, you'll see him pull a little bit wider, which opens up the inside channel for Eriksen to attack. This was a classic move that I've seen Ten Hag's teams do time and time again. A classic move, wide player gets it, opens up the space inside channel into the penalty area, cutback goal. And that's why I love this goal so much, is United are utilising the philosophy and principle. And it's very, very simple. It's something that we see time and time again with Arsenal, with Odegaard, with Saka, feeding each other on the right wing. This is what it is for Manchester United. Eriksen receiving, dropping a 1-2 for Marcus Rashford. And again, now we can see the space that Eriksen's going to attack. Brilliant run off the ball from Christian Eriksen, receiving in the penalty area. What I like about Wout Weghorst in this move as well is he takes the attention of the defenders. Very unselfish centre-forward play. Will Hughes has got to make that move over to close down Christian Eriksen and try and shut that play, because both the centre-backs are getting taken up by Wout Weghorst. He's the major threat at the moment in the penalty area. But what you'll see from Bruno Fernandes is some real smartness. He's going to attack the space that Will Hughes is vacated. As Weghorst kind of pulls the defenders out, you know, Eriksen could play that ball in behind, hence why both those defenders have been taken. But the cutback's on. Bruno's in huge amounts of space to attack the ball. Free space in the penalty area. You can see Weghorst and how he's taken those two players away from him in that situation, and Bruno Fernandes applies the finish. This is something that I think United will replicate more and more as Ten Hag's Man United build and get that structure. You know what we're looking at there, receiving, Eriksen receiving the ball, using Bruno Fernandes as a bounce pass in that central position, Partey being drawn over, Eriksen receiving again, then popping a 1-2 with Rashford, then utilising that space in behind the defence. Weghorst taking both the defenders, and Partey being drawn by Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes finishing. I think the big thing that Arsenal have got, though, that, you know, Crystal Palace haven't got, is a defensive midfielder that's going to be switched on. Jack has really switched on in these defensive positions, so he'll likely pick up that Bruno run, unlike we saw with Czech Decore not picking up the Bruno Fernandes run at the edge of the box. I think Partey's there to kind of deal with that. So I quite like that play for Manchester United. I quite like that idea and that output in terms of getting behind the defence, opening up the door, utilising the underlap and pushing through. For Manchester United as well, Weghorst provides a good threat in and around the penalty area. I think one of the big things for United is when they do work the ball high, it's hanging the ball up for Weghorst. Man United against Crystal Palace were treating Weghorst like Anthony Martial, where you're whipping in crosses, you're playing low crosses. This fella's 6'6". Hang those balls up to the back post. Allow Weghorst to attack the ball. I think Saliba and Gabriel have been brilliant in the league this season in terms of winning their aerial duels and winning those defensive challenges. But Weghorst is kind of a different proposition. But a proposition that both Saliba and Gabriel will relish. I think in terms of Manchester United targeting one of those players, Gabriel's aerial dual win rate is just 49% in the Premier League this season. So if I'm Man United, I'm attacking down that left-hand side. I'm hanging the ball up to Weghorst at that back post for him to score. And that's kind of the strategy I'd go with. I think for this game, that's one of the things that's going to be utilised. One of the things I think we forgot from the last game between the two sides is that Lokonga played defensive midfield. I think Partey is a massive upgrade on Sambi Lokonga. Thomas Partey was absolutely brilliant in the North London derby. Again, Spurs left him. I don't understand why Tottenham Hotspur don't pick up Thomas Partey. The biggest thing for this game for United is United getting aggressive on Thomas Partey. Because if you let Thomas Partey control the game, as he did, played 2 second assist passes for both goals in this match, he's going to run the show. And that's something that's going to change. Obviously, in the last game, Thomas Partey was not available for the match. This time, Casemiro's not available. That could swing the tie. That really could swing the tie. Partey's statistic against Tottenham, absolutely brilliant. 92% pass accuracy, won 4 out of his 5 tackles, 10 out of 10. what more could you want from a defensive midfielder? That's something United need to pick up Partey. And finally, for Manchester United, I think one of the things that United have got off the bench is a real dangerous player. I think in terms of setups, Man United should definitely start with Weghorst through the middle. I think that will give them a good base to build off. And if Arsenal do play really aggressive from the start, we'll give them an out ball. If Arsenal squeeze Man United, they can just utilise Martinez's long passing into Weghorst. But I think as the game goes on, what I'd like to see is Marcus Rashford moved into that centre-forward position and Alejandro Garnacho coming on to the left wing. Garnacho, massive impact from the bench this season. He's been directly involved in 3 goals off the bench. No Premier League player has been involved in more goals off the bench. But more importantly, Erik ten Hag's substitutions have scored 6 goals for Manchester United so far in the league. That's more than any other Premier League side. Garnacho off the bench, that directness, that ability to run at Ben White or Saliba. Going to be a very interesting battle, and we know that he's got the quality, showed it in the derby. That assist to Marcus Rashford in the penalty area was absolutely brilliant, and I think it shows that duality that not only can Garnacho cut in onto his stronger right foot and get shots away, but he can spin on the outside and get crosses away to the box. Of course, Rashford scored twice in the last game between the two sides. I think Garnacho off the bench is going to have a vital impact with that. Talking of the bench, I think Trossard as well, we'll see him give him minutes from the bench, and I think it'll be very situational. It'll be which of the front 4 aren't playing at their high level. I'd probably say Saka's likely to be the one that's going to stay, given his kind of unique style and his performances this season. I'd say that Trossard's probably going to be brought on in that central position if I was going to be a gambling man. D for life. White pockets Garnacho. No problem. I think the interesting side, though, D from the Manchester derby, that it wasn't actually the right back that was dealing with Garnacho, given the really high positioning from Manchester United's left winger. It was more William Saliba, which I think is even more an exciting battle. 2 young, brilliant players. Saliba's probably the best young centre-half in the Premier League. Garnacho, one of the most talented young wingers. That's going to be a cracking battle. Because what we saw with United is that they kind of drew City on at times to press them high and then play through and then play it out to that left-hand side, which I could see could be used again for Manchester United. Arsenal, though, are making big moves. Arsenal are making massive moves in the Premier League, and they should sit top of the league. It's about how they can kind of control the game. The big thing for United, no Casemiro. Scott McTominay really needs to control Odegaard, or Odegaard's going to have an absolute field day. And when you look at Casemiro, the impact is striking. Since Casemiro's first Premier League start, Manchester United have picked up 45% more points per game than they did to prior him joining. Manchester United have conceded nearly 2 goals per game without him, which is a bit of a concern for United. But guys, any more comments, any more points in the chat, any more questions for me? I need to have more of a look at Jakob and, of course, Ivan, the 2 players that Arsenal have been in talks with signing today. It's super exciting times for Arsenal. I personally, when we're looking at this, would I rather Arsenal win the league over Liverpool and Man City? Absolutely. Arsenal as a club have got great history, great tradition, and we've had great battles with Manchester United over the years, my team. So I think Arsenal are doing God's work in a sense. The 2 clubs that I obviously don't enjoy the most are 2 teams that Arsenal are potentially going to beat to the Premier League. I think this is a massive game for Manchester United as well to get them back into the league. The news that's obviously breaking right now, Arsenal have completed the signing of Jakob Kavar. Here we go. Contracts have been signed with Spezia. Fee to be in excess of 20 million euros with add-ons. 5-year deal. Medical in the next 48 hours. Big moves for Arsenal. Big moves for Arsenal. Doing really well. The recruitment absolutely spot on. That, of course, comes after the signing of Leandro Trossard. Obviously, his medical has happened today, so he should be registered for the weekend, which is exciting. Exciting to see him in an Arsenal shirt. Guys, before we go, get your questions in, last few questions. Also, let me hear your score predictions. Kieran in the chat, I think Manchester United will soak up the pressure and counter us. Could see Bruno on the right and Eriksen as CDM, McFred in midfield. Kieran, I don't want to see it because I think Eriksen's got the quality from deep that United need, but I wouldn't be adverse to, United starting in that way with Fred in midfield, Bruno Fernandes wide left, and Eriksen as a number 10. That worked really well against Man City. I think one of the big things with that, it allowed United to really squeeze high and press the football really well. I know how good Arsenal are at playing through the lines, and they've been brilliant building out. Their rhythm is beautiful. It's a thing of beauty watching Arteta's side. But having that extra work rate, maybe higher at the pitch, could be good. Having extra work rate at the base of midfield could be quite good. But the problem is the ball playing. When United struggle is when they've traditionally struggled over the years, has been playing those passes into the forwards. And that McFred midfield isn't the greatest at that. So I would prefer Eriksen deeper, Wout Weghorst from the start, as we had previously. Eriksen in defensive midfield, Weghorst through the middle, Bruno Fernandes at number 10. I think that would be a better thing for United. More questions coming in. What's your take on Arsenal's ability to handle United in transitions? Do you think United might switch to Rashford on the right-hand side in order to target Zinchenko inverted? I think the big thing with the transitional stuff, so Arsenal, as we mentioned before, they build very much with... Let's get Nketiah back in. They build with the two wide forwards. Odegaard goes inside right. Xhaka goes inside left. The build-up structure, obviously, is, in a sense, a little bit of a back three with Ben White, but we've seen him attack. I think Ben White could be a massive part of this game as well, from an attacking sense, because at times Rashford cheats. Eriksen gets drawn over. Ben White overloading that area, basically creating a bit of a 3v2 for United, against United, could be a bit of a position where Arsenal could utilise the ball and utilise it. What that means from a counter-attacking perspective, though, is big threat in behind. Big threat from Marcus Rashford spinning in and dealing with that. I think with Rashford, I'd rather see him on the left-hand side. I think from the right-hand side, obviously, he's been very, very good. We might see it in certain parts of the game, but I'd like to see the threat of Antony on Zinchenko dribbling in. Obviously, with Zinchenko starting in a kind of higher inside position in the transition, you expect Zinchenko to come from a central position out, which naturally is easier for a left-footed player to cut round, if that makes sense. So as Zinchenko, obviously, from possession centres in midfield, as positions turn over, he'll make that move from out to in to out, which naturally means it's easier for Antony to cut inside on him and drive on that inside position. And then again, you see that potential switch through Weghorst, Rashford in behind. For Arsenal to maybe deal with that and to counter, I think there's got to be a lot of responsibility from Ben White. I think transitionally, both the wingers, Ange Granit Xhaka and Odegaard, need to be on point in those defensive moments. But, Arsenal have been coached in such a way that I expect them to drop back well. But it is, I suppose that's kind of the game. It's Zinchenko maybe starting a little bit more narrow and not being so aggressive to get back to left back. Arguably in the transition, Arsenal maybe defending in a sort of 3-2 structure. So Antony can't cut inside. Arguably showing Antony down the wing on the right and allowing him to maybe do that would be my sort of 2 cents in there. Luke in the chat, midfield battle will be key if they sit. McTominay only will walk them. Got more comments from Copo TV. Do you think Arsenal will dominate the possession during the game, similar to the match at Old Trafford, with Nketiah pressing De Gea? Yeah, I think Arsenal will dominate the game. I think United will sit deep. I think Erik ten Hag's become a little bit more pragmatic in the Premier League and utilises the pace and speed in behind. So, yeah, I'd expect Arsenal to dictate the play, and I think that narrowness is something that Arsenal really need to do when they're building. It's having that narrowness back three, more defined maybe than usual for Arsenal in those situations. And then Martinelli and Saka making a real effort to get back. Trossard won't play against United, according to the chat. Arsenal win 2-0 and a red card for United. What do you think about Aaron Wan-Bissaka coming back into the starting 11? Great question, Christian. I like the defensive side of it. I hate the offensive side of it. I absolutely hate at times in possession Wan-Bissaka. He kills United. Diogo Dalot is so much more suited to play that role. And I think that Wan-Bissaka is an asset, defensively against Martinelli, one of the best wingers in the league this season. It's going to be a great battle. Going to be a very, very good battle. And I think Wan-Bissaka, after his performances in recent weeks, will do that well. The issue is when Man United win the ball back then Wan-Bissaka has to become an attacker. The times at Crystal Palace where he just played players into problems. And I think that is okay when you've got Casemiro at DM. But if you're playing Scott McTominay into similar problems, United could lose the ball. Arsenal breaking behind, big issues. So I'd prefer to see Diogo Dalot playing, but can facilitate a good defensive role for Manchester United in those areas. Hope that answered your question. Any other questions coming through as well? Trossard has been registered before 12, though. He might come on as a sub from Just Talk. D in the chat. The first 15-20 minutes will be huge. Always come out flying at home. An early goal kills it. That's the big thing, I think, for United is sitting in and defending. I need to have a look at Jakob. And does anyone know how to pronounce his second name, by the way? Because I think a W in Polish is V. So would that be Kavor? Let's have a look. Any Polish people in the chat would be very handy. Here we go. Left centre-back who can fill it at DM. I'll take a look at him after this game, guys. We might have another video coming out on the channel talking about Arsenal's signings. Him and Fran, obviously, really important. Kivor from D. Cheers, D. So Kivor, is that right? Saying it right. So Jakob Kivor. Yeah, I'll take a look at him. I did actually watch Spezia at some point recently. I think against Atalanta. I can't remember him. I was focusing on Atalanta. Played 17 games at CDM. Let's have a look at his. We'll have a look at him on SofaScore. Obviously, SofaScore, greatest app in the world. We can take a look at these things. Where is Jakob? Jakob. Yeah, and get your questions. Keep getting your questions in, guys. Jakob. I'm going to go Spezia. Matt, do you support Arsenal? Dave, love the content. No, I just appreciate Arsenal as a football club. My late grandfather used to watch them when he lived in London. Always said he used to love going down Highbury. So, you know, I prefer out of the top four, out of the top 6 teams, I think Arsenal are probably my but at the same time, we're in there. So got him here playing centre of a back three against Atalanta. 1 clearance, 1 block, 2 interceptions, 2 out of his 2 tackles, 1. Completed 90% of his passes. Very impressive against Atalanta. 100% of his ground duels, 1. Decent statistics those are against Atalanta, guys. Decent statistics. Let's take a look at where he's played. Obviously, midfield, centre-back. Comes from Anderlecht. Let's take Syria. Good game against Empoli in a recent game. 7 clearances, 1 block, 1 interception, 2 out of his 2 tackles, 1. 100% of his ground duels. Let's have a look at his overall statistics. Those win rates, those duels. 92% pass accuracy in his own halves, very good. Around 2.7 tackles plus interceptions. Again, good statistics. Completing 71% of his successful dribbles. Ground duels 45%. Could be improved. Aerial duels 65%. Good numbers there, guys. Good numbers. Really good numbers. How's Saka going to be defending in this system? I think it is you kind of when the team drops to the 4, when it is in the kind of more of their defensive structure, it is kind of on that left hand side. But I think from Arsenal's attacking side, I think it is about him making the yardage out wide. I think it's big for both Saka and Martinelli to make those defensive runs to help out the likes of Gabriel and Ben White. But I think the big thing that I can't question about Arsenal is their attitude at the moment. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Matt Kay, remember when Statman Dave was saying defenders need to be above 90%? Shows they're comfortable on the ball, or high 80s. So that's obviously something that, the style is very important to that. I know that Spezia are a very defensive side, a very counter-attacking side. So it's gonna be different, if you get what I mean, where when you apply those players to a team that plays possession and their possession statistics aren't great, then you got a problem. Hence, like Man United early part of the season, where I was like pulling my hair out because I was seeing 77% pass accuracies. Not good enough. Guys, get your score predictions in. Marco, you make a great point. What do I think the final score will be? Guys, get into the chat. Your score predictions. Get him involved. I want to see the scores, the goal scorers. Let me know in the chat. Is Shaw going to play centre-back like he did against City? Stefan, I don't think so. I think Shaw will be back to the left-back position in this match. I think that, him against Saka's a great battle in there. I think that's a level that United need to kind of go with. I think also having Martinez's ability to cover with the threat of Nketiah, with the threat of Odegaard, I think that's a vital important thing. But yeah, guys, get your score predictions in. Ashley, do you think Eddie has been completely underrated since filling in? I think Eddie's been brilliant. I generally think Eddie Nketiah has been very, very good. I don't think the signing of Trossard is to replace him. I think the signing of Trossard is to add a bit of competition to other positions as well. But you can't argue with what Nketiah has done. The biggest thing that I've enjoyed about his players, his work rate's been absolutely outstanding. Even in the North London derby, didn't get the plaudits, but worked exceedingly hard off the ball. His pressing, his aggression was absolutely superb, and I think that's something that you've got to have at the top level. So no, I think he's been fantastic. Right, guys, let's go through your score predictions. Thanks for sending those in. Where do we start with here? Let's shoot up to where we got here. So we've got the Crunch King, or Crunk King, going to go 3-1 Arsenal. Karoon's going to go 2-1 Arsenal. Nathan, 2-1 Arsenal. War is coming, 2-0. Andrew's going to go with a 2-1 Arsenal. Marco going to go 3-1 Arsenal. Ozren's going to go 1-0 Arsenal. Paz Sun's going to go 2-0 Arsenal. Haybee's going to go 3-2 Arsenal. What else have we got here? Awu's going to go 2-1 United. Isham's going to go 3-1 Arsenal. Saka on the score sheet for sure. Luke's going to go Xhaka and Nketiah, 2-0 Arsenal. Mohamed's going to go 2-0 to Arsenal as well. Croydon going to go 1-0. The Croydon De Bruyne, great name, is going to go 1-0 Arsenal. Potentially to be a cagey one. Lone Wolf is going to go 4-3 Arsenal. That'll be a good game of football. Ashley 3-2 Arsenal. Tom is going to go 1-0. Bob's going to go 3-0. Matt K is going to go 3-1 to United. AD is going to go 3-2 Arsenal. D is going to go 4-1. Statement win. I think it's going to be a lot tighter than that. Thanos going to go 3-1, 4-1 Max. Brian 0-0. Remy going to go 4-0 Arsenal. Ronald going to go 2-0 Arsenal. Xhaka to score as always. Great score predictions, guys. Thanks for everyone that's got involved. John's going to go 6-2. I think it's going to be much tighter than that. This is going to be a very, very tight game, I think. I think a goal wins it. I think a 2-1 or a 1-0. I think it's going to be very, very tense. Very, very cagey. And I do think the first goal, vitally important for this match, sets the tempo. Really does set the tempo in this. Innocent's going to go 2-1 Arsenal. Yaim's going to go 2-0 to Man United. Lucky Sucker's going to go 5-0 to Arsenal. Definitely don't think that. Man United are one of the best defensive teams in the league following the restart. They've been brilliant from an expected goals conceded and clean sheet. Expected numbers have been very, very good. Similar with Arsenal. Both these are two of the best defensive teams. I'm going to be dead boring, guys. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but I think it could be a 0-0. I hope not. I hope there's goals. We all want to see goals. But I got a feeling it's going to be 0-0. Matt, I kind of agree with you. I think it's the two best teams, the two form teams in the league right now. Man United unbeaten in 10, 9 wins and a draw. Arsenal are absolutely bulldozing teams at the moment. Battering the likes of Tottenham. Draw with Newcastle, beating a very good Brighton team as well, 4-2. Very impressive result considering Brighton have just turned over Liverpool 3-0. There's some impressive numbers coming out from Arsenal, impressive numbers from Manchester United. I think that's a stalemate. I think a 0-0 or a 1-1. Trossard should be registered for this game, but I think he'll start on the bench. I think Nketiah will start for Arsenal through the middle. Yeah, maybe another Newcastle. That's kind of what my mind says. My heart says I want a 10-10 draw. But, guys, big GGs in the chat. Thanks for everyone that stopped by today, guys. Do remember to smash that follow button on all the Statman Dave stuff across Twitter, across Instagram. But more importantly, subscribe to this channel because we're live 12:30 every Saturday, every Saturday, every Friday, Premier League preview, where we'll be looking into the big games in the Premier League. Obviously, we focused on Man United versus Arsenal. We've also focused on Liverpool versus Chelsea. But of course, through the season, we're focusing on other teams. So if we've not mentioned your team this week, don't worry. We're going to do it. Big GG's in the chat. Thanks for checking out all the content, all the love on the Trossard video as well, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll continue making that banging content. And we'll have a look at Kivor for you. We'll have a look at Kivor from Spezia. Maybe bang a video out today with that. Huge GG's. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And we'll be back next Friday. 12:30. But of course, check out the Premier League review as well. That comes out on Mondays. Big GG's.